All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to our America's episode of Roster Mania. And, I was trying to figure out my regional expert. Obviously, I was over in Korea, so I didn't get to watch any of the NA games, really, except for occasionally in between prep for my own season. So I figured, why not bring in somebody who has been actively basically on all of the teams in tier 2 that were relevant at any point and has played against all of these guys and scrimmed and potentially even mentored some of them up into the tier 1 level. So I'm joined by T-Dog, the infamous Dr. Pepper drinker. How are you doing, man? Thank you for
I'm
joining
doing
me again.
well, man. Absolutely. I appreciate you having me, and I'm excited to break everything down today. I think that between probably me and Trick are going to be the people who are kind of like considered for this position because Trick was doing a lot of time watch partying, and he had a really good like just like following with being the watch partier of tier 2 NA.
Yeah, absolutely. And just for anybody who doesn't necessarily know you, you played most recently on Qbert Academy, right? And that was
Yep.
okay. So yeah, you were literally with some of the people that are now on Sentinels and working with them on a daily basis. So
Exactly. Yep.
yeah, perfect. All right, well, let's go ahead and hop right into our first team. We're gonna talk about. There's only one Ascension team in Americas because G2 kind of doesn't count. Like they
Right.
are an Ascension team, but are they really? Let's talk about Envy.
Sure.
Probably one of the more interesting teams for people in Americas just because of their story. Obviously, the one trick Yoru, the Baby J rebrand, the streamers turned into content creators into pro players. Yeah, talk to me a little bit about Envy, and then we'll get into sort of the mandatory changes that they had to make. Who is this
Yeah,
team?
definitely. Right. I think that Envy what's funny is on rankers before they were signed, I actually ended up playing with them. I was playing with them in the qualifier. And when I got a opportunity to play with TSM, I ended up taking it to leave, and they replaced me with Knights. So
Okay.
that was a pretty good replacement for them because he did very well in that stage 3 tournament. But with Envy, I've always had this like kind of I guess just like tick where it's like, all right, you know, soon the antics will end. They're
Right.
gonna figure out the Yoru. They're gonna punish Inspire. They're gonna, stop Kane and Ion at the time from, doing what they do, which is, kind of just like making their plays that they want to play. But Envy is so kind of drilled on their own identity and playing on their own terms that it's to the point where it doesn't even really matter. I will
Mm-hmm.
play rank games with Eggster and he will want to try strats from his practice.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking like, man, like I would never ever say something like, I want to do this and I want to do something that I did in practice and see how it works here. I mean, I would never say something like that just on the idea that I want to keep things like under wraps, but they're just an extremely confident team. And I think that with Kane and Ion, kind of not being able to play obviously because of age and having to slot in two other people, I think that this team has by far the most mental toughness out of any team. I
Really?
think
Okay.
that I think that they have their own personal opinions on who they're playing up against, and I'm not trying to downplay anybody's skill level when I say that, but I do think that they treat ranked with such a high amount of value
Mm-hmm.
that there aren't really a lot of people that are playing in Americas right now, maybe outside of like Zekin,
Mm-hmm.
who kind of like float around like that like rank 1 area. A lot of these guys don't even really play. And
Right.
they grade it so highly that I necessarily think that in a match setting, they will not have a shred of respect for anyone that they play, and they're just going to get in their face and disrespect them, and that's the hardest play style to deal with.
Yeah, it's actually a really good point because usually when people get onto tier 1 teams, they kind of have like made it, and once they've been on a couple teams, there's almost no point to kind of prove yourself, whereas these guys
Right.
essentially had to play their way into the league through ranked and through the premier system. So especially when you've got like the young kids and you have the number next to your name that says you're the best player in Americas. It's a pretty good system to not necessarily have that sort of like stage jitters or like the respect that maybe is not necessarily deserved by the other team. Um, so let's talk about, obviously you alluded to Kane and Ion are too young. I believe Kane is still under contract with them and will come in
Yeah.
at some point this year, but Ion is he released or is he loaned? Do you have any idea what's going on with that situation?
As of right now with
That you're allowed to
Shopify,
talk about, I guess.
right, I think that he is gonna move on, and he is gonna be with
Okay,
Shopify Black coming up in this next season. I just don't think it's fully, like, announced yet, but with Kane and, being able to turn 18 next year, I'm pretty sure gonna keep him kinda as the 6th man and, have someone play in the place of him for however long that may be.
gotcha. Okay, and it looks like it's rumored to be Kesnet. I don't know necessarily how confirmed that is, and obviously, I mean, people talk. You may know, but I'm not going to ask you to leak anything that you're not allowed to. If you were on this team, let's say replace Poppin with you as IGL, are there
Sure.
any players that you would want to pick up for Kane and Ion's positions? Kind of like knowing who they are as players and sort of the identity of the team.
That's a good question. I think that, I think that the 2 people that kinda come to mind, are probably Demon One and like Kesnet in terms
Mhm,
of like their ability to like play those roles at like proficient level. So obviously Kesnet is rumored, and Demon One has trialed with the team. I don't know how far he's gone,
mhm.
but in terms of that, I think that it just really comes down to someone who's just confident in their own ability and won't really like, I don't want to say like get in the way of everybody else, but more so where they're prioritizing themselves, because I feel like that's like the thing that Kane did really well is he just put himself in a playmaking position over and over and over,
Mhm.
and over and over and over again he made the play. He got the kill. He was disruptive. The amount of chaos he created, inspire someone was able to capitalize on it and do something to make the round easy to win.
Right.
But I would definitely look for someone who, I guess is self-sufficient in that way and, has, I guess, a forte to them that, they have what they want to do kind of figured out and they just want to be able to execute it.
Right. Yeah, just sort of like the disrespectful, like I'm going to make this play whenever I want to type of attitude. I think kind of fits in pretty well. And to me, Kesnet seems like a decent fit in that regard. And honestly, Demon One attitude wise, whether he can play the smokes at a proficient level or not, kind of irrelevant. Just let him shoot on Brimstone
Exactly.
and
Yeah.
whatever. All right. Well, we won't really give them a grade just because they were forced into these changes. But honestly, it sounds like they're handling it pretty well. Add in an assistant coach, and I mean, I guess do you see this team doing damage next year, even with the stand-ins?
I do. I
Yeah,
would I would have a kind of like partial bias because, I kind of like know these guys like
right.
recently like pretty well, but I would put them in a B tier if not A. I would
Okay.
put them high up.
Hell yeah. Well, I'm excited to see them play, and I'm a huge Eggster fan just because Yoru's like been my favorite agent forever, and he's like the only person I've ever seen play it at the level that he does
Yep.
in the professional scene. So
That is the bar. That's the top one.
yeah. All right, let's move on to a couple of teams that are in some pretty heavy rebuild. We'll start with Loud actually. They have made several changes. I guess some of them kind of happened at the end of last year, with like the likes of Verdi. But they're keeping Luke Show, obviously, Kawanzine, Pencata. Pencata moving over to IGL, apparently, according to this website. Adding in Verdi, and then Erde was recently rumored today, and then Darker, who I'm not super familiar with, but was playing in. Was he tier 2, like
Latam
North?
North.
North, yeah, Latam, on
Yep.
one of the better teams there, right? So
Correct. He was on Verdi's last team.
okay, cool. So they know each other. Yeah, talk to me about the new Loud squad. Dropping Robbie BK and leader their head coach, bringing in Romanilli, who I think was also in tier 2 Latam.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah, what do you think about these guys?
Yeah, so scrubbing these guys on Excelos Lasers last year when they were on that 30-plus game win streak,
Mm,
they actually consistently, just did well. And I think it came down to the fact that they just made a system with like a little cohesion where it seemed like everybody was able to kind of like pitch in on that. And it wasn't where you were forcing a square into a circle. It seemed like they were kind of doing the things they wanted to do. They're in the places they wanted to be in, and they just consistently did their job in those spots. So with Verdi moving up to Loud, that was mainly, I think, just off of like the performances he was putting up.
hmm.
Constantly just being, I guess like match MVP, like top frag style duelist in the Neon Rays Jet before the Wele Yoru big change came in. He was doing really well on that, and he was like an easy pickup for Loud. And now with Darker and Roman, these guys were also on EXL. So the way that I see this right now playing out is almost similar to like an EG dynamic I'll break down, but it's kind of like a power of friendship thing where
Mm,
these guys already have something that works. They're going to be
hmm.
able to integrate it with players with world championship experience in Cowan and Pencata. And I think that, don't disrespect to Loud, but the bar is low, right? We've had
Right.
a winless season and we've had a one-win split. Sorry, not season, a winless
Yeah.
split and a one-win split. So, at the end of the day, I just think that they just need to kind of get the ball rolling. And when they can knock down some games and, the dominoes begin to fall, they can actually build some serious momentum because I think that they have a big advantage with the amount of time that they've had as a, quote unquote core already. It literally
Sure.
just seems like a bunch of like good friends who are hanging out, and Cowan and Pencott are kind of like the big brothers of like that friend group between Lookshow, Darker, and Birdie.
Okay, and so Luke Shaw also knows them. Did he come from this team before? Like, was he in Latam North, or was he? No, he
He
was in
was
Brazil.
in Brazil
Yeah.
Challengers, yeah. He was in the Brazil Challengers, and he was basically 1v5ing on his last team.
Right. I also just wanted to ask, is we're gonna start with several of the South American teams. Unfortunately, they had a pretty rough season last year.
Yeah,
Um, as far as like scrimming goes, Latam North can scrim to North America, right? But Brazil,
right.
are they kind of like insulated? Their ping is
Yeah,
too
well,
high most of the
Brazil's
time, right?
Brazil's stuck. Yeah, they're not going to be able to play. We'll have to play Georgia against Latam North, and they're
Mm,
showing up on 80, 90, 100 ping sometimes. The
okay.
guys in like Colombia and stuff like that, but they'll sacrifice it for the quality of the practice.
Right. Okay, yeah, we had a very similar dynamic over in Korea with like the Indian scene is like
Right?
on terrible ping, and the Thai scene was on 60 when they wanted to play us and stuff like that. So yeah, it's tough out there.
No, it definitely
Australia,
is.
Australia
Oof.
just destroyed.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. Sad news over there.
Yeah. Okay. If you had to give Loud a grade, like GM wise, how do you think their offseason went? You think they did a pretty good job with what they had?
Yeah. I'd rate them a little under Envy right now in terms of what they did. I give them kind of like a B minus, but I do think they are like a little bit of a sleeper. I think that they can catch people off guard, and I think that they can start hot with the amount of time that they've had playing with each other already. I don't think there's going to be like I guess just like an introductory period where things are like a little awkward or stiff.
Hmm.
I
That
think
makes
they do well.
sense. Yeah, I mean, I kind of like the idea of taking the core that existed, adding in another core. As long as there's no like click issues and
Yeah,
everybody's kind of on the same page, it should be pretty seamless as far as getting going. So yeah, I think I'll kind of agree. Nice little like B minus. Definitely more than a passing grade for them.
for sure.
All right, let's talk about FURIA. FURIA, sort of the disaster org in
Yep.
Americas over the last few years, going with a full-on rebuild, except keeping their coaching staff, which is kind of interesting. Dropping all the Brazilian players,
Yep.
adding in Artsin, Koala Noob, Nerve, Alum, and EU. Obviously, EU, a fairly big name pickup. A
Yep.
bunch of tier 2 guys, plus Artsin coming over from MIBR. Koala Noob, I guess, coming back from EMEA. I guess let's start with Nerve on IGL. How do you
Sure.
how do you rate him?
I would rate him in terms of challengers last year. He started off IGLing in that stage 3 of technically 2024. And that was a point in time where I think they played in the rankers group and they ended up getting third, so they did get grouped. He continued holding the reins at the start of the 2025 season.
He was on
They ended
core,
up
right? Is that
correct,
core?
yeah.
Okay.
They ended up making playoffs. I think they had a 7th or an 8th round or an 8th placement there. And then in stage 2, the reins got passed to Darkest, as far as I'm aware.
Hmm.
And Darkest Ideas or whatever it ended up being, they didn't make playoffs. They ended up, losing in the Swiss stage. And then in stage 3, I guess it went back to him. And
Hmm.
he did a role swap of playing Recon because Kess, who was on his team, got picked up to 100 Thieves.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
he transitioned over to that, and he was in a spot where they kind of went on a good run. They beat some good teams in Swiss stage, and then they almost went to Ascension. They needed to win one of the matches against TSM or Envy in playoffs, and they would have got in, but they ended up falling short. So he was on the like the higher end of like the IGL capacity in
Hmm.
NA for tier 2 last season, but he didn't have it the entire time. So something going on there with like the coaching or just the team itself. I heard there was it wasn't the easiest environment to play in.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, tier 2 NA, you're getting poached. You're constantly swapping players in and out. Understandable. But IGLing for Furia, I mean, the bar is extremely low, but Nerve has been around for a while. I mean, he's been on a ton of different teams in tier 2 NA. Adding in some more NA talent as far as Alum. I guess talk to me about the roster. How do you look at this team as far as their construction goes?
Yeah, so from conception, I heard that Koala and Art were the two people that were kind of going to this team. And
Hmm.
I heard that Koala might have not be playing Duelist and he might be playing like a role like Sentinel or Controller and he might be calling. And Koala has had a really good micro approach to this game. When he played on M80, he would be changing execs on the fly in a match based off of trying to punish the opponent for the positioning that they are kind of like preemptively going to use for his pathing. So if he
Hmm.
dashes in one way this round, next round he still wants to do the Johnny A exec, but he wants to do it with this pathing and he micros the util. So I think his read on the game and his game knowledge is really good. He has a lot of energy and he is just a really good teammate overall to have with the amount of comms he puts out. And again, there's like the vibe that he gives.
Hmm.
But when I heard that he was potentially IGLing, plus Arts incoming, who is an IGL,
Right.
plus Nerve coming, who IGL'd,
Right.
and EU randomly getting thrown in the mix as the last player here. This was going to be Zerona, also from Tier 2. I don't know if EU had a deal that fell through or whatever it is, but he kind of like, um, you know, ended up taking Zerona's place towards the end there, I guess over experience or, maybe some sort of like a chemistry thing.
Sure.
And, he's a very vocal player. So
Yeah.
I see four people who, aren't going to shut up. And I think that that is a problem. I think that that is going to be a thing where you have too many cooks in the kitchen. The mid rounds
Hmm.
are going to be all over the place. And again, I don't necessarily believe in changing people. I don't think that you can change the way that someone is or plays. I think you just have
Right.
to use the strengths that they have and try to make sure that they're set up to succeed. So I don't necessarily know out of those four who's going to quiet down in that scenario. So I think that that is the thing that's going to be the hardest for them to adapt to. And then also some of like the roles were like interesting at the start as well. We kind of
Right.
have Alum and a duelist and Koala, as a duelist as well. Art has played the duelist,
Yeah.
Nerves played like the controller and EU's played the initiator, but Nerves also played the initiator. So it kind of seems like they are really putting in the amount of time that they need to catch up is what it feels like to other teams. They need reps, they need time. It's good that they're playing in the tournaments. And I think this was one of the first solidified rosters in NA. Like it was
Hmm.
very quick. This roster was basically set and done before Ascension ended. Um,
Gotcha. Yeah.
so they have been practicing for a lot of time now.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, to me, just as an outside observer, it kind of seems like, well, if we are going into sort of like a chamber slash veto type of Sentinel situation, maybe Koala can slot into that since he is,
Definitely.
a scope guy. Obviously, Arson did quite a bit of flexing around, so I'm not too worried about him. Alum seems to be just kind of like your stock standard, like aggro duelist, send him in,
That's
maybe
right.
good synergy with Nerve as IGL, and then yeah, I mean, EU is sort of like the elder statesman on this roster, right? Even though he's
Definitely.
kind of a young guy, he's got to bring in, I guess, the experience and maybe the leadership. So it'll be interesting to see. And then two Brazilian coaches with an almost entirely non-Brazilian roster. I mean, I don't hate the construction. You've got some like good players and stuff. You got some smart
Right.
players, it sounds like, but it's definitely, as somebody who had a lot of roster turmoil on my own team last year, uh, rolling the dice and hoping that five is going to work is always a very challenging prospect going into a
Right.
season.
Agreed.
All right, give him a grade. How'd the GM do over here?
I'd keep it at a C for FURIA as of right now.
Okay.
I think they got a lot of work to do, but again, with those players and me playing with or against them for 4 or 5 years now, I think that they can have success if they're all kind of like peaking and they find their groove. But it comes down to that being much easier said than done.
Right. Absolutely. Okay, let's move on. I was gonna do MIBR based off their stage 2 standings, but obviously they had a pretty good run at champs. So let's move on to Evil Geniuses, another team who did a lot of roster reconstruction. Com coming home to Evil Geniuses to re-team with Potter. Okeanos and Digizin coming over from the LATAM side of things. Bao coming in. And then, yeah, I mean, we've got a mix of tier 2. We've got Superman staying. He's always been sort of highly touted, I feel like, by a lot of people. Even though he seems like kind of a quiet guy. He's like a silent assassin type of
Right.
player. Yeah, I guess talk to me about this roster a little bit. Okeanos has been like a big prospect for a while, and he kind of finally got his shot last year on Lev. How do you feel about him coming over to EG, and what role do you think he's going to play for this team?
Yeah, I think that we're gonna kind of see him on the flex and
Hmm.
potentially like the controller as well, and we'll see Superman on like that second controller role, depending on the comps that they're like trying to play. Um, he is he is someone who seems to really have like a lot of passion about the game, and he's always kind of tried to put in hard work over time. And tier 2 and tier 3 has been inconsistencies with him, with his personal situation, or what's going on, but it does seem that he is kind of finding his stride. He had a pretty big breakout on Lev, and he's carrying that into next season, so I think he has the momentum in his favor there.
Yeah. What do you think about Com taking up the IGL role for this team?
I think that it's going to be interesting. Again, another thing that's much easier said than done. But the way that I see it is, if you have the confidence to do it, okay. I don't like when the three letters are affiliated with someone because they're trying to, I guess, get a job is what I'm trying to say here.
Sure.
Some people will kind of just like throw that in that they can IGL on like a post, and maybe
Right.
they get snuck in. I just think it's something that you have or you don't, because the L is the biggest thing. Okay, the
Right.
leadership. You need to
Yep.
be a leader. You need to be an emotional leader. You need to be able to carry forward an attitude on a team that people can follow. Do I think that he has that? Partially. I don't actually know. I know that he's always been a mid rounder and a talkative player. I know he's a smart guy, so I think that he has the capability to do it. But it's just going to be interesting to see, because I think that he had to be honest, a pretty disappointing season.
Hmm.
And I think that that's not negatively weighing on him, but just weighing on him in the sense that, he should be using it to, motivate himself. He's kind of back in his, home colors here. He's with Potter, right? He's got the
Yep.
boys with him. They got a good friendship dynamic over there. I'm sure practice is, very easy and fun and not dreadful kind of with that team.
Sure. Yeah, speaking of practice, like obviously this team kind of made waves when they won champs with like the 10-person roster
Yes.
for practicing. Do they practice differently than other teams? Like does Potter have a different approach? I assume you scrim them at some point. Are they like kind of a weird team to scrim or
They are. They are one of the weirdest. EG has never started on time. Not once. Not one time. Minimum 8 minutes late. I don't know if there is a scolding going on after the scrims. I don't know if there is some sort of breakdown. I don't know if there's like a line at the water fountain. They've never started on time, and they're notorious for taking pauses. So it
Mhm.
seems like they always have something to, work on, and they're trying to, get the absolute most value out of the scrim that they can, maybe a little, selfishly to a point, but they've never been like rude about it or anything like that. I just think it's funny. But
Right.
they they have this assistant coach coming in Mikol. He was coaching some tier 3, and he ended up being in challenges with the Ambrosia. They went on a little bit of a run there. They had a really good meta that they did well in, and then he went to Winthrop, and he was coaching them at Ascension as well, and working with King Fred on some of those Chamber Sage comps.
Mhm. You rate him pretty highly?
I'd put him up there.
Cool.
Funny enough, in NA for coaching, I mean, it's very barren. I constantly have peers or friends who are on rosters looking for coaches,
Mhm.
and really a lot of like or I guess like current maybe IGLs that aren't really like on a team or are looking for a team are being offered. There really isn't much out there right now, so I think that him moving up is a good thing.
Nice, makes sense. And I guess the last person that I want to kind of talk about on this roster is Digizin.
Yes.
I would imagine that he just kind of strikes me as one of those players that is just absolutely nuts in scrims. Like there's always a few of those guys that will just totally disrespect you in scrims and just drop 30, 40 every single time. Is that sort of on base with him?
It is, and the thing about DG is he's gonna do it in a match too.
Right.
That's the thing that I really like about him. He's an absolute match player. He is an animal. This guy just has a perfect execution of what he wants to do and how he wants to do it. And I think that he is a huge pickup for this team in terms of having a duelist, where
Yep.
if there could be some sort of system of cohesion and problem solving between the 3 or the 4, and he gets to do his thing and get put in good spots, he's going to be able to do it. Because I know, privately, that there was an attempt at that last season, and it didn't really work out for their game plan. And some people were kind of like sacrificed and put in bad spots for it. And
Hmm.
I think that the fact that Derek is leaving and the fact that this guy might not play challengers, it's unrelated, but I think that is pretty much a crime at this rate that that's the case.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, I feel like this team, they're always going to have expectations, obviously, as former champions, especially with Potter still there. But I feel like this, I don't know. To me, I look at the roster, they look like they could be a little bit sneaky. They've got some shooters on the team.
Very
They
good.
definitely have some good structure as well. So I'm kind of excited to see the new EG roster. Give me a grade for them.
I'd put them probably on the higher end of a C, a C plus, a B minus.
Okay, cool. We can work with that. All right, let's talk about perhaps LATAM's first super team, Crew
Yeah.
Esports. Sadak and Les coming back to the Americas from EMEA. MW Zera getting yet another shot with yet another team. And then
Yes.
Silence and Dante Deas, sort of like the young superstars of Latin America, paired together. I don't know Zonic, the head coach, but I mean, on paper, this team looks absolutely fucking insane firepower wise.
Definitely. I think that they can really hit the ground running here. Zonic is going to be your connect with Dante. He was on the
Okay.
Challengers team and moved up to Crew with him because they had that affiliate with Oxen. So it was like Oxen
Okay.
Crew, I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
is what it was called. So they got some good chemistry there. And Dante was a player in Challengers that also was a raid boss in the Neon Slide meta.
Right.
Permanently 25 plus a map in the Neon Slide meta. Really good mechanical player. Don't
Yep.
know too much about the way he communicates or his mentality, but I mean, you got to be able to just be hungry and have a good time when you got world champions on your team that are going to be making a system that you're the direct spearhead in. So
Yeah, absolutely. And then I think the really interesting one for me is MW Zera.
yes,
Obviously, Les and Sodic have played together a lot before. They've won a title together before, so pairing them together makes a lot of sense. Obviously, not necessarily Portuguese communication for Les, but certainly I would imagine more sort of like his culture, his style of team, especially with Sodic leading the way. But yeah, how do you think MW fits into this team, and what kind of role do you think he's going to play here?
well, I think the meta can complement this team really well, where we're going to see something that slow teams are going to get a lot of value in, and I think that Sodhawk can play that slow, meticulous game and kind of like pick people apart with your standard kind of like push pull. So I can see a double Sentinel comp, double controller comps, where MW is on Chamber in some of those, and Les is kind of like on the Viper,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that I wouldn't say he's like a proficient all-time opper or something like that, but I do think that it's his strength for Dante. I think that his rifling has shined over his opping, so I think the dynamic there could work between them, between the opping agent and the rifling agent. So I think that they can have some synergy.
Okay, sick. Obviously, they dropped Kesnet, Shy, Mazzino, Melzer come in with this roster. Um, I guess where do we think Crew's going to be this year as far as placement in the league?
It's interesting because it's hard to kind of get a read on some of these guys where this move seemed I guess like so like quick and confident where
Mm-hmm.
I don't really think this position was ever contested for Sodhawk. It just seemed like that was their guy and they wanted him to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'll speak in, real sports terms. There have been players who win championships and they quote unquote beat the game.
Right.
They're done. It's brand deal time. It's Nike time. I'm going to be doing commercials 5 days a week. I'm not showing up to practice. Is Sadak that type of guy? I don't necessarily think so. I think that he probably has a little grit. He probably has a little something to prove. He probably isn't gonna be okay with like the losing seasons that he's had on Loud and Carmine, even though he did win a little bit over there. But at the end of the day, I would say that they were both disappointments to obviously a world championship. So I think that if he comes in with that standard and he has that fire that he did, and he creates that system and the cohesion works with the players that are on the team, and they believe in the system that he works out of, then they can go far. But if it's a situation where there's some stubbornness between some of these players, I don't necessarily know who it is. I'm just talking hypothetically here.
Sure, sure,
I
sure.
can easily see them
These
falling
things do
short and
happen
being
in
bottom of the
teams
barrel.
for sure.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think for me, this is probably MW's last chance. Honestly, like he's
Definitely.
been on a bunch of teams. He's kind of been that guy supposedly for a while. It's never really worked out, and now you're putting him under probably the best IGL in the history of Latin America, South
True.
American esports, with a top 5 player all time in
Yep.
South American esports, and then 2 super young talents. Like this is your time to shine. So For me, I think this is like an amazing roster construction for this team. They need to kind of level up. They went and got their IGL. I feel like there's got to be a lot of money in crew just because of the backing that they have and all the sponsorships. So they definitely need to start putting up those results. So great job constructing the roster as far as I can see, but I definitely do see, there are some room for like maybe some problems to crop up based off of previous attitude issues that we've heard from some of the players. But
yep,
cool. All right, let's move on to 100 Thieves. 100 Thieves, one of the premier American organizations that has never really had premier results. Yeah,
that's right.
Ever since Nitro left, I feel like they've kind of been mired in like trying to figure it out. Even when Sean Gear's DDK took over, they had some good results, and then they kind of fell off. Keeping Cryocells and Asuna, and then going out getting NBS and Doom Bros, some real high firepower coaching, adding in Vora Timotino from NBS's TSM team, and then bringing back Bang, who seems to be sort of like an org favorite over there.
Yes.
Dropping EU, Xander, Boostio, Kess, and Zix. What do you think about 100 Thieves this year?
I mean, it was a pretty big gutting, and I do like the approach of what you talked about earlier with that core plus core. We got the TSM core of a proven system. Can it get better? Absolutely, but at least it's proven. Second place Ascension. Yep. First place in stage 3 playoffs, beating Envy 3-1. That's a literal franchise best of 5. That's not like some challengers like gimmick that someone's holding onto. It's a legitimate franchise best of 5. So,
yep.
Being in that case, again, a team who has something to hit the ground running with. They've been playing in tournaments, getting reps. I do have a bias because I did work with NBS a little bit on TSM before I left to go to Sentinels. And I think that his ideas and the way that he wants the game to be played and the standard that he holds his players to, I think it's all super important. I think it's really, really impactful. And I think the only way that I could see NBS ever falling short is if people I'm not talking about this team. I'm talking hypothetically. If people kind of like have egos and constantly fight him and like disrespect him in terms of just like the standards that he has for his team, because he knows what it takes to win, and he's going to create an environment where that is the focus, that is the standard, and he has some hungry players on that team as well. Bang is definitely coming for a revenge tour this season. I already think that he was underutilized previously on 100 Thieves when he was on this lurk role. It just didn't even look like he got to play the game when he was playing Viper. And even when he was on Omen, he was just like in this like stationary position where, if he died, it looked like he got like a lashing or something like that. Like he never took any risk, and he's an insane player and he needs to be in playmaking spots. Vora and Timotino, I wouldn't even really say coming from tier 2. It's more of a ranked thing again. They have more time playing ranked than they do challengers. They played both their first season this year, and they both did very good and were kind of standouts. Timotino eventually down the line is probably somebody who's going to be able to play every single role in the game at a high level. I knew him, or I guess I got introduced to him when he was playing on a French-Canadian team called the Grid. And it was kind of a run-of-the-mill group of kids that were just insufferable to get on your team and ranked. But this one Timotino guy who spoke a little better English than the rest of the French Canadians was constantly 25 plus on these random roles, flex, duelist, smoke, whatever it ended up being. So he kept grinding, and he kind of shined out all the people that he formerly played with, and he's doing really well on duelist right now. He can he can play all the roles on duelist. It works like super well. And in those TSM comm videos, I hear him leading retakes. I hear him talking in the mid round. He's just a good player, and I know that he has confidence, and as long as this team can kind of keep that up and focus on themselves, I think that they can do big things this season.
Yeah, I think he was obviously like the Envy players were standouts at Ascension, but I think he might be like the most interesting player coming out of the Americas Ascension for me, just because you could really you can just look at a player and how they like interact with the game and just know whether they have the killer instinct to be a top tier duelist or not. And what I saw from him was like just instantaneous decision making. Like, I'm taking this fight right now, and that quality is something that is like nearly impossible to teach people because it's like so instinctual.
Definitely.
So bringing him in, I think, really should take a lot of weight off of Cryocells' shoulders, because this guy, like, he's just never been a hard entry, and he's always been kind of asked to be that, or Austin has been asked to be that when they're probably better in other roles. So I think maybe sort of forcing them into a more like real structure of like roles should help this team out a lot. And I do
I agree.
really like your point about Bang too, because I remember watching this guy in Tier 2 North America, and he was the guy that would like paranoia teleport behind you on Omen, and I haven't seen that in
100%.
years. So
Absolutely.
like I do hope that MBS and Doom Bros are able to unlock him a little bit, because
Right.
he is an aggressive player, but has been playing in a box for the last couple of years, it seems like.
For sure.
All right. If we have to give them a grade, give Sean Gares, the new GM over there, the new old GM. How
I
do you
would
do?
I'd give them an A. I'd put them up high, and I would say that they can contest kind of like the big three, and win maps off them and potential like series when we're talking about actual real matches, playoffs and stuff like that.
Cool. Yeah, I think I'm on the same page. And obviously, I'm a little bit biased. I worked with MBS over at Ascend for a while, so I know the guy very well.
Yep.
And yeah, him and Doom Bros both have titles, so what better
True.
job can you do?
Exactly.
All right, let's go talk about Leviatan. I hear a lot of people talking about Leviatan. Sato and King, the two remaining members, they got rid of Okeanos, Com, Tex, Desmo, and Mikol, bringing in Owner, the infamous Owner, for the head coaching spot, and then adding
Yep.
in a bunch of Leviatan Academy players who have been lighting it up in Latin America. So, what do you think about this team? Is the
I
hype
think that
real?
this team it is very real. I haven't seen an opper with proficiency as Neon since Wardell, and Wardell's
Really?
the best opper who's ever played this game. So, the way that this guy abuses that gun, specifically when he's like playing chamber, is pretty unreal. So has set the bar like pretty high for what I was watching in the China esports, the festival, like that cup that happened.
Mhm.
They played Leviatan in the finals. Sato is an insane player as well. King, insane player as well, even though he's calling in blows and Spike, also high rated prospects coming out of the Brazilian region. So these guys again not only have this like crazy individual skill ceiling where any one of them can just flip around and win it, but they also have this like friendship dynamic, it seems, where King is kind of like I guess like Master Splinter in this, and all the other ones are the Ninja Turtles, and they're just like running around, like eating pizza, burping, and like having fun. And that's a hard team to beat when everybody is having fun and they all like each other and can spend time with each other.
Yeah, that is true. I guess one potential question mark for me is just Owner as the head coach. He's known for being kind of like a hard ass, sort of like a get in the gym bro type of guy,
Right.
and I do wonder how that's gonna sort of mesh with the younger dynamic.
Yeah.
As an older guy who's coached younger players, I know that there's a little bit of friction there sometimes. So
Definitely.
yeah, I guess we'll kind of have to see. As far as like roster construction, I mean, the team is utilizing your academy for the right reason. You're scouting good players, you're developing them, and then you're bringing them up to your real team. Seems to be pretty good to me. If you had to give them a grade,
Definitely.
what would you say?
I would give them an A plus.
A
Um,
plus for this team. Okay.
yeah, I'd put them really high. I just think that the decisions they made were all proven on results and not really like any theory. I don't necessarily think that they're going to be the best team in the entire world, but I do think that they can again contest the big three and get results.
Okay.
And I think that this team, the more time that goes on, the better they're going to be as well. The more that they learn and the more that they play, they have a really high ceiling.
Nice. I mean, as a Ninja Turtles fan, I'll definitely be watching this team pretty closely. Okay, let's move on. We're moving into like the top 4 or 5 teams now as far as the rankings go. Cloud9 and the power of friendship or nepotism, whatever you want to call it. Zelsis and Penny being added to Cloud9, Mitch and Net out. Oxy, Vic, and Zeppa staying as per usual with Emmy as the head coach. No news about an assistant there. I know they're working with Googly, but I believe he has posted looking for team, but I could be wrong about that.
Yeah, I remember him from previous season.
Yeah. All right. What's the deal with Cloud9? Zelsa's moved over to IGL. What's going on here?
It's an interesting thing. I think that Zelsis moving to IGL is a thing that he was probably thinking about for a while in terms of what he does for the team. He was
Hmm.
leading post plans, he was leading retakes. You know, he adds in mid rounds and he plays important roles that have responsibility that similar IGLs do. So I think that the transition is, I guess, fine. I think it's a better transition than if I had to bet what comms would be. I think Com would probably have to do like a little more work to kind of catch up in that role than someone like Zelsis would.
Hmm.
Um, but I think that I'm okay with him slotting in there. For me, it comes down to like the role where it's like, you know, what are we going to see him playing, right?
Right.
Like, I don't necessarily want him on the hard lurk that he previously played, you know, when he's IGLing, because I think that it's a detriment and it's kind of counterintuitive and it's just hard to do it from that.
Yeah.
So, you know, we're going to need to see people like Zeppa, and I know that Vic is doing it now as well. You know, pick up in the comms department and just being vocal and helping out in the mid rounds and stuff like that, and it can definitely work. Now, Penny coming out of tier 2, he's kind of always been on someone who's been on like the cusp, I guess, like of greatness. You know, the
Right.
liquid fill was great for him in terms of like a showcase. I think he did a good job. I want to see him play Sentinel this season,
Hmm.
Chamber as well, and using his opping power. And I would not want to see him play the double duelist specifically because these Counter Strike players who have experience and come to this game, okay, it's about keeping the game in front of you. Okay, that's when
Hmm.
they do the absolute best. Okay, and when he's on this hard dive duelist and he's, you know, moving his mouse all over the place and he's first in, I've only see him like play like to his absolute potential when he plays with someone like Stellar, because
Hmm.
Stellar usually likes a slow game, a methodical game, and that's when Penny is going to do the best. So on Sentinel, you can be slow, you can be methodical, you can play this smokes and mirrors kind of matchup where the game is in front of you the entire time. And I think this is where he can actually hit his peak if he's playing the Sentinel for the majority of the time, and not getting put on like duelist like too much.
Okay. No, I can see that, and I mean, I feel like following Oxy in kind of has to be a crazy experience anyway, because he's just like a
Absolutely.
mile ahead of everybody.
Yeah.
Um, one other question mark for me is, I mean, I guess aside from kind of Mitch, this team has literally never had like a hard recon player since Zeta left. Like this, like
Yes.
it's been like 3 years that they've never really had like a true
Yeah.
one trick Sova fade type of player.
Correct.
Um, is Zelsis gonna do that? Like,
I don't think so. I think that Zeppa is going to be able to do it,
okay,
and Zeppa and Oxy are like the points that I would transition to next. Zeppa's
uh-huh.
best recon role was a no duelist fade on Icebox. That was the best time that he's ever played recon on this team.
Mm-hmm.
Is in the hard chamber meta when you didn't play a duelist on Icebox. That's the best that I've seen. I think
Mm.
that he really needs to step it up in a veteran style role in terms of how I guess just methodical he is with his approach. I don't want to see him making mistakes. I don't want to see him wasting utility, making positional errors. I think that he needs to be that guy so Oxy can be that guy.
Mm-hmm.
And I just kind of point the finger at him where I know Zeppa, he's a great player. He's smart. He has great mechanical skill, but it doesn't come down to just that. You know, now we're starting to talk about the micro of the way like the role works, where,
Mm-hmm.
you know, if you're just going to be playing it at this like weird 70% effectiveness because you're kind of like filling it, you know, that's not going to be good. We need to see like a higher ceiling than that, and that needs to be scaled. And I know that he has the capability to do it. And you know, Imi's got to be right there with him, kind of moving along and making sure that he's getting the job done. And you know, for Oxy with me, I think that this guy has top 3 mechanics in the entire world. I
Mm-hmm.
think that he's a person who, again, could play any single agent in the entire game and do well. I don't think that he would skip a beat.
Yeah.
Oxy needs a leash, okay? Oxy needs a leash, and he
Yeah.
needs to become a little bit more of an elitist. He is Jameis Winston of the VCT Americas, okay? He is going to throw a record amount of touchdowns, and he's going to throw a record amount of interceptions because he's swinging for the fence every single time.
Yeah.
And it isn't something that's going to be good. Okay, you had your little rookie stint, you know what I mean? You had the year where you only ate McDonald's as a meal. Now it's time to, you know, lock it in and make sure that you're doing your job right. You're set up to succeed, and when you get in the advantage situations, you close them out. Because the thing that's crazy to me about Cloud9 is that when Mitch gets cut, a post gets made saying that they didn't even have a strat book. Oxy can do whatever he want, and no one can do anything about it.
uh-huh.
Like, there are so many crazy parts about this team, and they're it's not like they're the bottom of the barrel. They're contesting international positions. They're
Right.
they're getting through playoffs. They're going down the line to these places, and that's with apparently no playbook. So they started from the ground up when they were working with Mitch and Net, and now they're going to be doing it again. So again, I think this team can have a really high ceiling. It just comes down to the likes of Emmy, Zelsis, Zeppa, and Oxy. I feel like if they can
Right.
really just lock in and just do the things they need to do consistently, while obviously having fun, while obviously having room for their own kind of like intuition and being able to play how they want. Yes, I'm not saying you can't make a mistake as a duelist. I'm just saying that you need to be winning games.
Right. Yeah, I do kind of hope that Zelsis brings a bit of like what he had at Sentinels over to this team in that role, because I feel like there's some world where he kind of just gets like swept up in like the power of friendship and kind of like, is a little bit too lax. But if
Yeah.
he's a little bit more drilled like he was and kind of like the general like he was at Sentinels, I think it could put Cloud9 in a good spot. But yeah, I'm a little bit hesitant about this team. I guess if you had to give them a grade for their offseason work, what would you say?
Like a B minus, like for me.
Okay. Fair enough. All right, moving over to the Sentinels, who had some pretty big changes. Obviously, the aforementioned Zelsis going over to Cloud9, Bang going over to 100 Thieves, and Zekin going over to MIBR. So 3 big players moving to direct competition in the league. That's a little bit tough. Replacing them with Cortezia, Caillou from the Sentinels Academy team, Cubert Academy,
Yes.
and Redux as well coming up. Narrate seemingly moving over to Duelist, and John Cutie no longer calling. Very interesting moves for this team.
Very interesting. Something that I really didn't fully understand to begin with. I think there's a lot of times where you need people who can kind of just like I guess just like flourish in the role that they want to play. So I don't know where John is in terms of that. Does he want to
Mm-hmm.
be a caller or does he not? I don't think there's a lot of people who have the skill set to make that decision. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
I think that it's kind of one or the other. So that's a concern for me in terms of what he's doing. They have won 2 of their own events, which is pretty impressive. Um, with Caillou, he is a little bit of a script reader, and I don't mean that in a bad way. That's something that is good when you have a coach like Kaplan and Gunter, where they're going to set you up to succeed. You just need to do the things that you know how to do. Do the strat, do the default, do the this, do the that. I haven't really heard any sporadic on the fly stuff from him
Mm-hmm.
before playing Valorant,
Did you
and
play with him on Cubert, or was he after you?
I didn't. He was after me. Him and
Okay.
Satellite came after me. Yeah. So I think that he has a good kind of system there with those coaches where I would see an IGL like that, or I would assume that they would kind of like come up short or potentially fail depending on the type of coach they had if it wasn't good.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that Bonkar really proved that with NRG, where a lot of people might not realize Bonkar was a player. He was
Yep.
an IGL.
Yep.
Did he have 4 kills every map? Yes, but he knew how to win and he knew the system that he needed to create. He refined it on Oxygen. Okay, when he was playing in Tier 2, moved up to NRG, and he had the people who were able to execute it in Ethan, Mata, Scoo, Brock, and Sam. So
Yep.
it does work. It's not like it's a thing that it's bad. I just don't think that I think that there is a difference. There are kind of like IGLs who are very like nitpicky and it's their system, kind of their approach versus like their coaches. So as long as
Mm-hmm.
that relationship works, it works. Cortez, huge shooter, heavy hitter, steady guy. It seems like he's fun to be around. I think that he's like a easy pickup.
Yep.
Um, I see him kind of getting like compared to like Tex with like this like MIBR thing that's like going on like as well, saying like why didn't they take him over Tex?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's that big of a deal. People can have seasons that aren't necessarily good. People were talking about Tex as like a top like 3 Sentinel player when he was on Lev with Aspas, and when he wasn't, the team did bad. It's not like it was like just him. They didn't
Right.
get really any results, so it's not a big deal. But regardless, Cortez is a solid player, and I think that he can keep scaling to get better and better. He's kind of playing like that, just like lurking role. So we'll even see him on like the Astra. We won't just see him on the Sentinel.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he's. I think he's a great pickup for Sentinels. Honestly,
Yeah,
I guess my two. I guess there's a lot of questions on this team, to be
yeah,
honest. But let's talk about Narrate on the duelist role. Obviously,
okay,
this is where he came up. Mad
yes.
Lions, he was their duelist player. He played a bit of duelist for Carmine Corps when they had their kind of breakout early season a couple years ago. Moving back onto the duelist role, seemingly, how do you feel about that move for him?
I think it's good. I think he's proficient on it, and he's a person who can play all the duelists.
Mhm.
For me, with narrate, it's gonna be time to just shut up. Okay, you played a controller, you played initiator. You need to focus on your crosshair. You were the rank 1 chamber player. You were. You were there, act after act after act, 30 every rank game, just shitting on pros, and now you're here on the biggest stage. Replicate it again, right?
Mhm.
He has a very he's smart, he's an intelligent guy, and he's kind of concerned about just like the state of like the defensive setup, or the pace on like attack, where I just want to be able to hone in on his crosshair and kind of just like play the game, because I think it's important on that role that you have the ability to kind of like turn it off and on, and he needs to
Mhm.
be able to turn it on.
Yeah, makes sense. And then Redux obviously has been sort of like the chosen one in North America for a while.
It's true.
Finally getting a shot in tier one. Did you play with him on the academy? You did,
I
right?
did, yep.
Okay. What are your thoughts on Redux? I've known about this guy for years, and he's always been like crazy aim, crazy mechanics, also fairly smart despite being young. Pretty
Yes.
flexible. So where do you see him slotting in here for
Yeah.
Sentinels?
He's a super mature kid. For his age, he's not like a cocky asshole or anything like that. He's smart and he's a good teammate. Again, can play any role. I don't necessarily want him to explore that right now. I like that they're using him on Duelist and Controller. It is a pretty kind of like seamless transition for him, where you can have similar responsibilities that you would have with the Duelist, and he can manage responsibility like having a paranoia, or being able to do certain jobs in certain rounds. He's able to do that. So he will continue to get better with time. But he's a great pickup as well. All three of those guys are going to do well on the roster.
Nice. All right. I mean, obviously, I think Sentinels probably had to do a little bit of like hole patching on their team. I don't think they were necessarily looking to make a ton of roster moves, and then kind of had to as a result of other teams coming in.
Yeah,
So as far as like handling the offseason, how would you say they did?
I would put him. I would put him kind of highly, like on a B plus angle. I think that the system is going to exist with Kaplan, and they could be integrated into it like super easy. B plus, like A minus angle for me.
Hmm. Yeah, I guess the one potential question for me is like if things don't go well early, is there sort of friction between John Cutie and Caillou? Is like, hey, I know how to do this job better than you type of situation.
Definitely possible, and I think that that was like the thing that I thought of when Jonah said he wasn't on G2.
Hmm.
That's a bad time to open your phone when you're someone like Caillou, and you end up like losing a qualifier or a tournament or something like that. But we'll see.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. There's definitely some heavy hitters out there not on teams right now. So
100%.
yeah. All right, let's talk about a couple of the heavy hitters now. MIBR gets a bunch of investment in their company, and they go out on a spending spree, picking up
Oh yeah.
Zekin from Sentinels, Mazzino from Leviatan, and Tex also from Leviatan. They re-sign Fraud. They bring in Happy, who is a pretty big name for CS people as well. Adding
Absolutely.
them to Ospas and Verno, dropping Genom, Cortesia, and Artisan. I mean, this team looks pretty stacked. Ospas Zekin 1-2 punch is about as good as it's going to get with Verno. Is he I think he kind of showed that he can IGL last year, I guess, at
He
least with
did.
the structure of Fraud
He
in
did.
place. So yeah, I mean, talk to me about MIBR.
Well, when you got someone like Aspas, you got to realize that you can't even pay him a money amount because it's too much. You got to give him equity in the company. That's what Leviatan had to do in terms of how much money he was getting paid. He negotiates what he wants and he gets what he wants, and we're looking at it right now.
Yep.
This is his four best friends.
Okay.
Someone literally asked him in a Twitch chat, "Yo, what's your all-star team? Who are your favorite teammates?" He listed those four people. He ended the stream and he realized, wait, I could just get that. And then he did it. So now MIBR has Aspas and his four best teammates that have played those roles individually.
Hmm.
Mazzino had a crazy peak when he was on Leviatan with him, following him in on Breach and Sky.
Yep.
Okay, Tex crazy peak playing Sentinel and just having a good time with him. Verno did extremely well, picked up IGLing with him, and now Zekin. I mean, Zekin. Okay, got it. So
Yep.
MIBR, the bar is set higher than I've ever seen. But the people that are there, they have the capability to do it. So
Yeah, I mean it's got to be an A plus as far as the GMing and
Yeah,
roster construction. I mean, I
definitely.
believe in Fraud as a head coach. I think he's proven it across multiple teams now that he knows what he's doing. Him and Ospas seem to have a very very good relationship.
Yes.
And yeah, it's one of those situations where if you get an all-time player, this is the thing in sports, right? You get an all-time player, you have to capitalize on the window that you have them, right? So you need to
Right.
assemble the team to get as many championships as possible in that whatever 2 3 year window that you have. So looks like they are kind of swinging for the fences here. Um, I guess if there had to be a question mark, it would be Zekin moving off a duelist over to, I
Yes.
assume, full time smokes, because that's kind of, yeah,
Controller. Yep.
yeah. Obviously, he can play a bunch of stuff. I remember when he was like one of the best Sovas in the world,
Yep.
and
Sure.
so I know the kid can do it. Do you have any sort of hesitance with him switching roles or anything?
No, not with him. I would think for me, the question mark would be kind of like the I guess the bounce back from Mazzino and Tex. I saw him
Hmm.
do good once, and I know they can do good again. I just don't actually know, exactly what that looks like for them in terms of just their like personal life and their training, etc. They just got to get back into the swing of things quick.
Sure, that makes sense. Yeah, I mean the pressure is going to be crazy on this team, so
Definitely.
you better be ready for it. All right, G2 kept their roster except dropping Jonah P for Baby Bay. What a weird move. Um,
Very weird.
you know, Jonah P was highly touted last year. I feel like he probably had his best year that he's ever had last year. And whatever Baby Bay did to this team, as far as the environment goes, it must be the
So
most
insane.
valuable thing in the world because I mean, it's the fact that Jonah P is not on a team right now is blowing my mind.
Yep. It's
Yeah,
crazy.
thoughts?
All right, starting with Baby Bay. Again, a match player. Okay.
Yeah.
Previously, when he was younger and playing this game, he had some problems with expectations with teammates. Okay, if
Hmm.
you were someone who was average or potentially bad, and you played on phase with Baby Bay or another team, you are going to be. It would be known that you are average or bad. He would be very to a point where it's a little damaging in terms of like constructive criticism. It's kind of just like drowning it. So when he
Hmm.
gets put on a team where when you play Breach and Teo and you win everything because you can control, recontrol, and execute without making mistakes, he's going to do very well. So obviously like the vibe and the fun that he brings, it seems good and it seems like it, works with the team. And I mean, I don't want to take anything away from Jonah. I think he's an unreal player. But at the end of the day, Baby Bay technically did earn his spot, even
Yeah.
though he was playing for Leaf. And I know that there was some sort of deal going on where Leaf might have been in Kiko's spot. He might have moved to NRG,
Hmm.
and that didn't go through. So maybe there was some weird transgression where it's like, damn, we thought we were going to have like Baby Bay. We want him. How do we get him? We
Right.
can't lose Leaf. I don't know the exact details on that, but
Wow. Okay. Yeah. It does seem like this was not just as straightforward as all right, Baby Bay replacing Jonah. It's all good. Like we just think it's an upgrade in that regard. There's definitely some
yeah.
other stuff that went down here. I mean, this team obviously they are an ascension team, but they've been at the top of the region for the last year. Um, I feel like Trent, obviously, quote unquote Teo Merchant. People have forgotten that he was like an unbelievable Sova as well. I guess
100%.
Giacomo seems to slot very well into this team. They needed somebody who's selfless and can just kind of send it when they need to go in. Obviously, Leaf is sort of like a perfect Swiss Army knife, and
Yep.
with Baby Bay coming in, I mean, this guy has probably more competitive esports experience than like full teams put together
Correct.
at this
Yep.
point, and that's
I don't
definitely
remember.
something that I think G2 probably could do with is having somebody who knows how to win and has been there before, and I think that's probably what they saw as far as the value from him. Obviously, keeping the coaching staff together. I mean, they will definitely be shit on if they're not good because
Oh,
of the
100%.
Jonah P situation. But I
They
feel
will
like
riot.
even with the pressure, it's hard for me to rate them any lower than they have been. I guess. Do you have any sort of like counterpoint to that, or you think they're just going to be just as good as they have been?
No, I mean if they came down to the thing where it's like, damn, this one little thing, or damn, this one thing that we're missing, we could have went the distance with it. If they found it with this decision, then yeah, we already saw a team go 3-0 in the domestic finals. They didn't, perform great internationally outside of the start, but um, or to their expectation, I guess they obviously performed well, but to their expectation, I think that it's going to be potentially crazier. Yeah,
Yeah, I think that is a good point. If they had won a tournament last year, like if they had won Bangkok, probably it's an entirely different story. But since
yeah,
they've been so good but never won an actual international tournament, I think it does kind of make sense that you'd look for a change, even
yeah.
as crazy as that is. All right, let's move on to our world champions. Energy. Sam obviously retires. They go out and they pick up probably the most skilled smokes player in Europe. Kika replaces him. The rest of the team stays the same. For me, this is like pretty cut and dry. Like they essentially got a firepower upgrade
Yep.
in the one spot that they had to replace, and it's not like they cut Sam. They probably could have just run it back and been just as good, but the only thing that they're maybe missing now is just that internal leadership that you kind of alluded to with him. Um, will they be able to kind of like replace that with the other players? Will they be able to sort of overcome not having like the good vibes in those important moments? What do you think? And have you scrimmed against these guys? Are they crazy?
They do very well in practice. Yeah, I've scrimmed against them. Um, it comes down to a thing where they never really have something to like not practice. If it gets to the point where they've gotten what they've wanted to do, they start dry running executes on you and stuff like that. So they do well with their time. For Sam and that kind of like older brother, I guess, like dynamic, like the vibe thing, the leadership thing. For Kiko, I just think that energy, if they were to have a problem, it would be the dispersion of that to the core.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't want Kiko to have that responsibility. Yo, man,
Yeah.
start saying "Let's go." You need to say that every round, okay? Like,
Right.
no, they can pick it up. If Scoo and Mata and Brock, if they want to start saying that stuff and doing it, they can. But for me, like top teams, it kind of is this like evolution thing where that's how you're gonna see like new peaks, and that's how you're gonna continuously get good as you evolve. So if they have the same exact approach as they did like last year, there might be some like bumps in the road. But if they're taking this time to like evolve and get better, realizing they don't have a one for one person, which obviously they understand that, they're
Mm-hmm.
they're going to be just fine.
Sure. And I guess one question for you is like, I know there's been some talk about it. I don't think it should be done. I don't think it will be done, at least not right now. If they were to like remove the Odin or nerf the Odin in some main way,
Mm.
what's Brock's value? I know it's still pretty good, but like
Yeah,
what is his value there?
Brock, playing with Brock, people don't understand. I I can't think of a time where he makes a mistake.
Hmm.
He is such a complete player. He says what needs to be said. He does what needs to be done. Whenever there is this like hole in the setup or a gap, it's either filled and managed or it's vocalized and we're doing something because of it.
Hmm.
Uh, it it's like when people talk about autopiloting as like a negative thing. Anything that Brock autopilots or does, it's all just value. It's all just good. It all just makes sense. So I think that he is just an unreal player, and it kind of goes to show like with the like mastery of the Odin, where people will like point the finger and like make fun of him and this that and the other.
Right.
Why hasn't anybody else done it yet? It's obviously not an easy thing
Yeah.
to do. Anybody can get good from 0 to 80% of a skill. Now we're
Yep.
talking about the 81% to the 100th percentile of a skill, and understanding like what mastery is. And obviously, that's what it came down to, where it was just such an abuse thing. And I know that Bonkar definitely like had some sort of like helping with it, but it just comes down to player identity, like
Yeah.
I don't really see the amount of I guess like hate that like Sinatra got for like using this like run and gun like LMG like tech like
Right.
that Brock did just because he won. It kind of just seems like a coping thing that everybody's just randomly like mad about because it doesn't take skill or something like that. Okay, got it.
Yeah. I mean, that's always been my response. I was like, the Odin doesn't need to be nerfed. And people are
Yeah,
like, yeah, it does. I'm like, well, show me one other person who can do what Brock does. And there's
yeah,
nobody. So it is what it is. All right. I mean, I think we give NRG a nice little A. Like, it
yeah,
can't be an A plus because they didn't keep their championship team together, but what can you do? You got a good
exactly.
upgrade. Okay, final question for you, Mr. T Dog. If you had to pick the top 3 teams at the end of the year, so they've done all their development, they've been through their bumps in the road. What are your top 3 teams in the Americas VCT next year at the very end?
It would come down to NRG, G2, and MIBR would be
Okay.
that like 3rd spot if it came down to fighting for it for me. And I think if you said 5, I would say your 4th and your 5th position could be attributed to teams between Lev, 100 Thieves, Sen, Envy. I really think there's a lot of like variance. People have like notoriously talked about like America's being like top heavy, I guess, with like teams that kind of just like can't be like toppled. And we saw like the G2 like Sen like rivalry like over and over and over again.
Yep.
I think that America's right now is a region where anybody can beat anybody. I don't think that there's an F team. I
Yep.
don't. I think that there are C teams, but I don't think that there's an F, just a team that, you just laugh at. I think that anybody can beat anybody, and when that comes down to it, it's just going to be a thing of probably just like meta and kind of just like peaking and individualism,
Right.
competing for like those like top like 4 or 5 spots, where the people who have it figured out obviously have the advantage in NRG and G2, and then between individualism and the meta stuff like that, timing, MIBR, Sen, Lev, 100 Thieves, I could see Crew, I see Envy, I could see Loud, I could see potentially like C9. Like it's really all over the place. It's very competitive.
Yeah, I mean, I was in Pacific last year, and what I really saw there was like the floor of Pacific came up, and like the top kind of stayed where it was, maybe came down a little bit, but it was
Yeah.
the most competitive region by far, and the results kind of bore out as like why it was the best region last year.
Mhm.
That's what I see in Americas this year is like every team that was not good has leveled up, and all the good teams have either stayed there or like made changes to kind of at least claw for that spot. So
Right.
I totally agree. I really don't know who's going to be good in this league next year. I think everybody is going to be pretty good, to be honest, and,
Yeah,
and
it's
that's
gonna be
that's
really
definitely
entertaining.
scariest. All right, man. I really appreciate your insight and just all of the little nuggets of insider information from being in the scene
Yeah,
for so long. I've been following your work for a while, so I appreciate you and thank you so much for giving me an hour of your time for this stuff.
absolutely, man. Thank you. Likewise.
Cool, cool.